Hi there, everyone, and welcome to the Daily Gardener, and thank you so much for listening. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling, and it's March 9th, and there are just 11 days until the first day of spring. Today we celebrate an East German nurseryman and plant breeder who's remembered in the name for feather reed grass. We'll also learn about an exceptional English author and garden designer, and we'll hear a little snippet about gardener's Latin as a clue to the meaning behind plant names. There's always a clue. And today we'll grow that garden library with a fantastic book about the business of flowers. And then we'll wrap things up with a beloved old poem about botany, and it's one of my favorites. Now, before we get to all of that, I just wanted to start out by giving a huge thank you to Mary Beth Hughes, who shared a wonderful post in the Facebook group for the show. She was responding to the recent profile I did on Anna Scripps Whitcomb, whose orchid collection helped start the Belle Isle Conservatory in Detroit. Anyway, Mary Beth shared a beautiful photo, and then here's what she posted. She writes, "This is the Belle Isle Conservatory, or officially named the Anna Scripps Whitcomb Conservatory that Jennifer spoke of last week. Two things I wanted to add to the story are this. First, during World War II, when London was being bombed, Britain sent orchid collections to Anna for safekeeping from the Blitz. And many of those orchids were still in her possession when she left her collection to the city of Detroit at the time of her death." And then the second story of interest is that the new Pete Audolph installation here in Detroit on Belle Isle is adjacent to the conservatory, and it will bring thousands to the island to see his beautiful garden. And we can show off the conservatory to all those visiting as well. And then Mary Beth included a beautiful picture from Wikipedia. And in this picture, you can really appreciate the beauty of this domed conservatory, which of course was part of Anna's gift in addition to the orchids. And it really is a beautiful landmark for Detroit. Anyway, thank you for sharing that, Mary Beth. And for all of you listening, if you ever have an additional nugget, a little item, or a correction to a story that I share on the show, please reach out and share that with me. And you can email any additional information or get in touch with me very easily. My email is jennifer@thedailygardener.org. Or you can always just jump in the Facebook group like Mary Beth did and share your thoughts. So once again, Mary Beth, thank you for sharing that. And then before we get to curated news, I just wanted to offer up some ideas for herbs that you can grow in the garden. You know, right about now, the questions are rolling in and people are wondering what to plant in their gardens. And I did get a question last week from a listener who was wondering about my picks for easy herbs or medicinal herbs that I plant in my garden. So I thought I'd share a few of them with you as you're putting together your shopping list for the herbs that you're looking for your kitchen garden or for your own home apothecary garden. Now, these are things that you might want to consider adding to your list, especially if you're a new gardener. These are easy herbs for any garden. And I wanted to quickly add that if you're a brand new gardener, herbs are almost fail-proof. You cannot go wrong planting herbs. They're sturdy plants. The insects leave them alone. They have virtually no pests because they're so aromatic. And at the same time, they're a favorite of pollinators. So they're just a win on so many levels. But if you're getting started or if you're just looking to add a few things to your homegrown apothecary, here are some of the plants that I would encourage you to consider. All right, first up is chamomile. Now, chamomile is in the Asteraceae family, and that just means it's a relative of the daisy. And if you ever look at the chamomile blossom, it's so sweet. You can see that. You can see that it's got that distinctive daisy shape. Now, there are two types of chamomile that you can grow. You can grow either the Roman or the German. And oftentimes, when you're buying chamomile from a garden center, they don't even use those distinctions. The tag will just say chamomile. And it really doesn't matter because you can't distinguish a difference when you're using them for whatever you're doing with this herb. And you can use them completely interchangeably. Each of them, the Roman or the German, will do the job just fine. Now, medicinally, chamomile is used for so many things, everything from anxiety to upset stomach or even general inflammation. But there is one caution that you should be aware of if you're going to grow chamomile, and that is that there are some people that have a skin sensitivity to chamomile. And there's one clue that this may impact you, and that is that if you have a ragweed allergy, because ragweeds are also in the daisy family. And so, of course, as with any herb, if you're picking it and you develop a little rash on your hands, that's a good clue to avoid using it, either externally or internally. Now, I'm just going to take a second to share two more herbs that I think are wonderful for a homegrown apothecary. Now, the next one is lemon balm. Now, lemon balm can actually be a little thuggish. It really grows if it's happy. But that's never bothered me because I love lemon balm so much. And here are a couple of things to think about when you're growing and using lemon balm. First of all, it's antibacterial and it's antiviral. So a lot of people use lemon balm when they're making their own home cleaning products. Now, for me personally, I like to use lemon balm when I'm out in the garden. I'll take a few leaves, rub them together, and then rub them on my arms or legs because that lemon scent, that citrus scent, is not attractive to mosquitoes. And the other way that I like to use lemon balm are for incorporating it into salads because it really brightens up a summer salad. And I just love the texture and the flavor of those leaves and the brightness of that taste. It's just a wonderful combination. And then another great way to eat lemon balm is in a tea, a lemon balm tea. So keep that in mind. So that's lemon balm. And then next on my list would be holy basil. Holy basil is also called Tulsi, and it's in the same genus as the regular basil that we all know and love for making pesto. But the wonderful thing about holy basil is that the leaves and the stem have this beautiful purplish undertone. It's so attractive. Now, you can pick up some holy basil at the garden center, or if you'd rather, you can just direct sow it outside. And don't forget that in the fall, you can bring in your holy basil and just keep growing it inside. That's a wonderful option if you really enjoy using holy basil. Now, one of the things that you can do with holy basil is make a tea. I have a friend who loves licorice, and if you've never tasted holy basil, it has a licorice or anise flavor. So if you love that flavor, you're going to love holy basil tea or just incorporating those basil leaves into your cooking. All right, so there you go. Those are my tips for today on some easy herbs that you can grow in your 2021 garden. All right, it's time for today's curated news. Today's curated news comes to us from Forbes magazine, and this post was written by Laura Mansky, and the title of it was Feel Happier, Easy Ways to Gaze at America's Most Gorgeous Spring Gardens. Well, with most of us still on lockdown, our ability to see gardens is still not what it used to be. And so I love the title of Laura's post, Feel Happier, because just being able to virtually experience these wonderful gardens across America is definitely a day brightener. Now, the gardens that Laura features are the Atlanta Botanical Garden, the Biltmore, of course, the Chicago Botanic Garden, a personal favorite of mine as a daughter of the Midwest, the New York Botanical Garden, and finally, Longwood Gardens. And there's no doubt about it, these gardens represent some of the best gardens in the country. So feast your eyes if you're looking for a little pick-me-up. And of course, I've made it very easy for you to check out Laura's post if you're in the Facebook group for the show. All you'll need to do is search for the word America, and Laura's post will pop right up. And she's got all the links to those gardens right there. Now, if you're not in the Facebook group, don't worry. It's so easy to join. All you need to do is search for the words Daily Gardener Community, where you'd search for a friend, and then request to join. I'd love to meet you in the group. It's time for today's Botanical History. Okay, here's today's botanical history for March 9th. Today is the birthday of the revered German plant breeder, writer, and garden designer Karl Foerster, who was born on this day, March 9th, in 1874. Now, Karl was born into an intellectual and accomplished family. His father was an astronomer, and his mother was a famous painter. And many gardeners are surprised to learn that Karl began gardening at the tender age of 7. And just 1 year later, Karl entered a professional gardening program, and he studied there for 11 years. When Karl turned 18, he took over his family's Berlin nursery, which was a little bit of a mess. But Karl had a knack for running the nursery. He streamlined the business by simplifying his plant inventory. And although Karl loved all plants, he was especially drawn to tough, low-maintenance, hardy perennials. Karl used 3 factors to determine whether a plant would be sold at his nursery: beauty, resilience, and endurance. And those marvelous standards actually ended up bringing great success to Karl's nursery. When Karl turned 24, he moved his nursery to Potsdam. There, Karl married a singer and a pianist named Eva, and together they had 1 daughter. Now, knowing Karl's high standards for plants, imagine how exacting Karl was as a plant breeder. And here's another indicator of how Karl thought about plants. He never pollinated flowers by hand. Instead, he wanted nature to reign supreme. Today, Karl Foerster grass is a recognized staple in many gardens, and the story goes that Karl was on a train when he spied the grass along the tracks. To seize the chance to collect the specimen, Karl actually pulled the emergency brake to stop the train, and then he quickly collected the specimen that now bears his name. And while many gardeners have heard of Karl Foerster grass or feather reed grass, Calamagrostis, many fail to realize that this grass was successful because it first met Karl's high standards for perennials. And if it hadn't, we would have never heard about it. And back in 2001, already 20 years ago, Karl Foerster grass was the perennial plant of the year. And if you're wondering, there is a variety named Overdam, and it's just a variegated version of Karl Foerster grass. Karl's plant performance expectations and his appreciation for low-maintenance spaces with year-long seasonal interest helped shape something called the New German garden style of design. And a Karl Foerster garden had some signature plants, grasses, of course, delphinium, and phlox. And it goes without saying that these three plants were Karl's favorites when it came to breeding. And Karl once wrote that a garden without phlox is not only a sheer mistake, but a sin against summer. And he also wrote that grasses are the hair of Mother Earth. Karl lived until the ripe old age of 96. And looking back, it's staggering to think that Karl spent nearly 9 decades gardening. And it was Karl Foerster who said, "In my next life, I'd like to be a gardener once again." The job was just too big for one lifetime. And it was on this day, March 9th in 1892, that the English author and garden designer Vita Sackville-West was born. In the year 1930, Sissinghurst Castle, or at least what was left of it, was bought by Vita and her husband, the diplomat and journalist Harold Nicholson. Together, they restored the house and created the famous garden Sissinghurst, which was given to the National Trust in 1967. After seeing Sissinghurst for the very first time, Vita recalled, "I fell in love at first sight. I saw what might be made of it." Vita explored the depths of her own creativity as she shaped the gardens at Sissinghurst. She came up with the idea for a sunset garden, and she wrote, "I used to call it the Sunset Garden in my own mind before I even planted it up." Vita's sunset garden included flowers with warm citrus colors, like the yellows, oranges, and reds of dahlias, salvias, cannas, and tulips. Vita also created a white garden, one of the most difficult gardens to design, maintain, and generally pull off. White gardens are challenging, and you may be thinking, well, why is that? Well, here's the main reason. Once white flowers are done flowering, many of them age poorly. They often turn brown or yellow as they wither and die on the plant. But I have to say that 10 years ago, I did help a friend install a white garden. And when it was in bloom, it really was spectacular. Now, by the time World War II happened, Vita and Harold had been working on Sissinghurst for nearly a decade. But there came a point when they were both convinced that a German invasion of Britain was becoming more likely. Never one to run from a challenge, Vita decided to plant 11,000 daffodils on the property. She was essentially leaving her legacy and a message of defiance to the enemy. Vita's personal life was as varied and fascinating as the plants in her garden. She'd had relationships with both men and women, and she loved the people in her life intensely. Once, in a letter to Harold, Vita wrote, "You are my eternal spring." And on December 29th, 1946, Harold wrote about Vita in his journal. He wrote, "Trying to convince Vita that planning is an element in gardening. She wishes to just jab in things that she has left over. The tragedy of a romantic temperament is that it dislikes form so much that it ignores the effect of masses." And I love that little excerpt because it gives us so much insight into Vita's personality as a gardener, in addition to all of her wonderful books. In 1955, Vita was honored with the Veitch Memorial Medal, which is awarded to those who've helped advance and improve the science and practice of horticulture, and Vita definitely achieved that. And I thought I'd close out this mini biography of Vita with her own words. Here's something that Vita wrote about spring. "She walks in the loveliness she made between the apple blossom and the water. She walks among the pattern-pied brocade, each flower her son, and every tree her daughter." And she wrote, "We owned a garden on a hill. We planted rose and daffodil, flowers that English poets sing, and hoped for glory in the spring." It's time for Unearthed Words. Today's words come from Richard Byrd from his book, A Gardener's Latin. It's one of my favorites, and the subtitle is The Language of Plants Explained. Here's a little excerpt from Richard's section on general personality. Plants can be said to have a personality, a certain air about them, and this is often reflected in their names. The term vulgare often refers to what was considered the most common plant in the genus at the time of the naming. Thus, the primrose was named Primula vulgaris. Many species names describe the beauty of a plant. The specific name Bellis means beautiful, and it's fairly easy to identify. Elegantissima presents no surprises, as it means very elegant. While Dies shows even greater beauty, since it describes a plant belonging to the gods. Dies, which of course makes one think of the word deity. It's time to grow that garden library with today's book, Flower Confidential by Amy Stewart. This book came out in 2018, and the subtitle is The Good, the Bad, and the Beautiful. And it's hard to believe that this book has already been out for over 13 years. This was Amy's third book, and it's one of my favorites. And I remember thinking when this book debuted just how sensational the stories in this book were. And also, I was amazed by the incredible lengths that Amy had gone to write this book and to help us understand just what the flower industry is all about. Now, the publisher describes Amy's book this way. Amy Stewart travels the globe to take us inside this dazzling world. She tracks down scientists intent on developing the first genetically modified blue rose. And she also meets an eccentric horticultural legend who created the world's most popular lily, the stargazer. And she even visits an Ecuadorian farm growing exquisite, high-end organic roses that are the floral equivalent of a Tiffany diamond. Amy sees firsthand how flowers are grown and harvested on farms in Latin America, California, and Holland. And it isn't always pretty. You'll never look at a cut flower the same again. This book is 320 pages of the secret story of flowers in the marketplace, highlighting the intersection of flowers, technology, marketing, and money. You can get a copy of Flower Confidential by Amy Stewart and support the show using the Amazon link in today's show notes for around, wait for it, $2. That's right. And I think it belongs in every garden library. Finally, here's something sweet to revive the little botanic spark in your heart. It was on this day, March 9th, back in 1929, almost 100 years ago, that Burton Braley wrote this wonderful poem, and he shared it in a science newsletter. Burton called his poem Botany, and I have a feeling you're going to recognize it. So here it is. There should be no monotony in studying your botany. It helps to train and spur the brain, unless you haven't got any. It teaches you, does botany, to know the plants and spotany, and learn just why they live or die, in case you plant or potany. You learn from reading botany of woolly plants and cottony that grow on earth and what they're worth, and why some spots have not any. You sketch the plants in botany. You learn to chart and plot any. Like corn or oats, you jot down notes, if you know how to jot any. Your time, if you'll allot any, will teach you how and what any old plant or tree can do or be. And that's the use of botany. Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener. And remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day. Hey, thanks for spending part of your day with The Daily Gardener. If you want to read even more botanical brevities, just head on over to thedailygardener.org. That's where you can find all the stories, biographies, and books that I share on the show. And while you're there, be sure to sign up for my free Friday newsletter. It has lots of goodies in it, and I try to make the newsletter like you're getting a marvelous letter from a garden friend. You can always find The Daily Gardener on all your favorite social media. You can follow the show on Twitter, and you have a standing invitation to join the free Facebook group for listeners of the show. Just search for Daily Gardener Community the next time you're on Facebook and request to join. Last but not least, you can easily share your gardener greetings or book submissions by emailing me at jennifer@thedailygardener.org. The Daily Gardener is produced in lovely Maple Grove in Wyoming, Minnesota, with the help of Paige Mance, Brooke Bierbaum, and Eric Begay. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling, and as always, have a great day in the garden, and we'll see you tomorrow.